special guest along with your calls right here on the Edge radio broadcast with your host, Daniel Ott.
Continuous study of this really opens my eyes to other avenues. You know, you learn something every time you talk to someone else about what they're saying and why they're saying it. Because sometimes they say things and you're like, why are you saying that? That's a very strange thing to say. And, you know, lately, well, for some time I should say, they've been saying, we're going to poke you in the eye. We're going to poke you in the eye. And here I'm thinking, you're going to take out my eyes. Well, I soon discovered that meant sex. And very cryptic. I've read that satanic worshipers are very cryptic in the things that they say. They don't talk in regular conversation. They are always cryptic in everything they do. And I just find that to be very, I don't know, strange to me. But that's very interesting that you brought that up about Judas, because a lot of people feel that's where anti-Semitism came in, was they used Judas. And as we know, he was deceived by the devil.
Absolutely. Again, it wasn't, it's not about, Jesus came to die for all of us. We all put him on the cross. And so, no, we can't get into, and that's where I think an old Catholicism and so forth failed, and others that tried to, blame the Jews. And, no, the world is to blame. Jesus died for the world. He came willingly, and no one was going to stop him. I heard George Norrie from Coast to Coast not too long ago. He literally said, he was talking to somebody on time and issues of time, travel, things like that. He said if he could ever go back in history, his you know what he said? He said, I would love to go back to the days of Jesus and stand there before he went to the cross. He says, what I would like to do is take him down from the cross. And he meant it in a good way. He meant it in a good way, like he didn't want to see Jesus suffer. And then George Norrie said this. It was striking. He says, but I don't think he would have let me. So I sent a note out, and basically I said, George, you're right. He wouldn't have let you because he was there to give his life for you. And he came willingly. So
yes, he came willingly for us. That's amazing. And he had a message of peace. I mean, to hear the Sermon on the Mount, I think, would have been unbelievable. I just think you're right. It would have been interesting to be there at that time period. But I do have a difficult time watching his crucifixion on TV. It really brings up a lot of emotion for me.
Sure.
So I just, what he did for me in my life is fabulous, and I'm not going to ever let him go. But I want to go back to law enforcement involvement. Many of us organized stalking victims, we call the police, we get arrested. We're the ones arrested. Police reports are falsified. Often organized stalking victims are taken away to psychiatric wards immediately when they call the police. And I know, and we all are starting to understand, that many of the police officers aren't involved with these satanic agendas. Not all of them. There are still good officers out there, and I hail them for standing up to this. But there are many officers now. And I'm noticing with many cases of organized stalking, no police help. They often side with the perpetrators. So I know that this is a major infiltration, I think. It's starting, and it's turning against the good people in society for a satanic agenda. I know there were police officers at my sexual assault. I saw them. I know who they are. And I will expose them when the time comes, if it comes. If it doesn't, I know about this. So law enforcement is definitely involved.
Exactly. And when I say law enforcement, I say that law enforcement has been infiltrated. For example, the person that recruited me, actually they came to some of our Shatter the Darkness, we were doing local studies, and they came to the meeting, in uniform. And they said the chief wanted them to come over and learn all they could about cult crime, things like that. Then they recruited me to be the police chaplain at their department. Well, then we got into it, and here they were highly trained, placed, so forth. This is the one, again, could speak 5 other languages, write things, knew, was very proficient, all kinds of stuff. But here's how it worked. We're sitting in the police department. This person is on the computer. I'm sitting off to the right, kind of, and I can't see the screen. So it's like they switch to an alter personality, and they were typing like the most proficient, hacker you've ever seen. And they turned the monitor towards me where it said, "You are now being monitored by U.S. government." And they were showing me the names of individuals. Then they would turn it back, put in another code, and it's like they knew these codes, where to go. And I was dealing with them one day, and I asked about all the information. And here's what I found out. All of the crime information, all of the information where there's reports of people being abducted, stalked, all this kind of stuff, this person founded a cult ritualistic abuse law enforcement regional network. And they were the ones collecting the information, not to put in the data banks for law enforcement, but to send wherever it was to whoever, to send it off, and again, do reconnaissance, report it, and to alter the information. So talk about, and you're right, even young folks that have been in satanic covens, again, the cops are recruited purposely for that purpose. They're recruited to have somebody on the inside. It's like the old, and if you don't believe that, think about the mafia and things like that. That's always been part of the game. To recruit somebody, in the inside, as a officer who would be connected to the mafia. Well, the same thing is true with this side of things, to where there be somebody there that can intervene, that can just say the person's crazy, do whatever they can to
discredit them.
Keep it. Yeah, absolutely.
Discredit.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And that way you won't know what's going on. This person ends up committing suicide, and they falsified everything, and no one questions, oh, that poor soul, they committed suicide. There was something wrong with them, and there's not. Because I know many victims of this stalking, and I call them by the devil's foot soldiers. I call these people the foot soldiers of Satan, who are well-educated. Some have 2 master's degrees, classic pianists, people who really had a lot to live for, and who were very smart, and who are very smart, but they're being persecuted. And, they're being driven downward and made to look bad in front of other people that they know, including their family. These people drive a wedge between family members, between husbands and wives, between children and their parents, between siblings, and they do this all for the Satanic Agenda, because Lucifer does not believe in traditional family. He wants a free-for-all.
Absolutely. And he likes to isolate victims, because isolation is, again, breaking the will and bringing them down completely. And again, he would rather that we conform to his side, just like, again, the old occult teaching of Alice Bailey. It's about conforming all of us. Even in that material, which was kind of a training book, that book is like a training book literally guided by demonic inspiration, literally, almost like handwritten, to where it had things like in there, taking some of all this new age teaching and different kinds of, stuff, and putting them into the old forms. In other words, we need to take this information and somehow bring it to the old traditional churches, and then step by step, cause them to shift in our direction. Even like when they use the phrase Christ, they don't mean Jesus of the scriptures, of Isaiah or Paul or whoever. They mean a Luciferian Christ concept, and they clearly talk about a leader to come, and they'll clearly talk about a second coming, but it's a second coming of presence, that there's no visible person returning. It's incredible to see this, that literally. What God has revealed in Scripture, you can see it on the playing field right now, and the demons are dancing, the demons are speaking, and they have a mask at the border, and they have communicated, they're building still incredible technologies and so forth, so that not only in the help of bringing Antichrist to power, because if you think in terms of how can one individual come to power and all of a sudden seize all of the European nations, somehow align the Arabic, Russian nations, and then somehow collapse the United States so that we can't interfere. How's it going to happen? Well, it's going to be it's ultimately a spiritual development. The scriptures are clear about that. A secret power of lawlessness. 2 Thessalonians 2. And it's going to stay hidden until it's under the table until eventually they break loose. And, it will occur. The Antichrist's arrival biblically is clear. It will really occur in history. He'll make Hitler look like a shoeshine boy.